Now we're going back to square one, making fire.
That labor is a fundamental issue for Orania. That we believe labor is a sacrifice to God, and to work yourself is to we don't really believe in political parties as a sustainable way to solve the problems of.
Greetings, Joost. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity to have a conversation on your podcast.
Thank you very much for being a part of BTH. We truly appreciate your time. Joost, I just want to find out something before we even start. How is the heat in Orania?
It's nice and warm. It's been very warm. You must remember that Orania is semi-desert climate. We get extremely hot days. Luckily, we've had some rain over the weekend, and that cooled down the earth a bit. So it's manageable, but still very warm. I can tell you that the men in building houses, constructing buildings in Orania, they are on a first-hand basis with the sun. It is really hot in Orania, but luckily the rain managed that a bit for us now. So later in the week, it will probably be back to the oven.
It's boiling everywhere in the country. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
Maybe it is this climate change that we so often talk about. Without wasting time, though, maybe if you could just give me a bit of context for people that don't know what Orania really is. Can you just shed some light briefly?
Just that question alone can keep us busy for quite a while. But I would say Orania is two things. The first thing is an idea, and the second thing is a reality. So what do I mean by this? What I mean by this is that many people do not know that the Orania idea is an idea that is formed by an organization called Sabra, and it started the first formal event seminar that was held about the Orania idea and the own labor idea was in 1952. And that grew from there into the 70s and the 80s, meaning that Orania is not a reaction. Orania as an idea is not a reaction to the changing, the winds of change blowing through Africa and the change of government in South Africa. Orania is an idea upon itself. It is an idea that was built from the foundation up. It was not a quick and non-thought through reaction towards the change of government in South Africa. So in the 70s, when the previous government were maybe on the height of their power, in the 70s or 80s, a few Afrikaner intellectuals, specifically Professor Karel Boshoff, which is one of the founders of Orania, and Dr. Chris Joost, started envisioning the future for Afrikaners a bit different. They said, listen, we're in a situation where the apartheid government wants to divide the land and give certain homelands for some of the black tribes and then rule over the rest. That was in the Verwoerd era, particularly. While they said, what if we turn it around? What if the only future for Afrikaners is a homeland for us? And that is kind of the thought process that led to the Orania idea, saying that Afrikaners are a people upon ourselves. We are a folk, a people, a nation in own right. And we also have the ambitions to make political decisions for ourselves. And that needs to be done in a context where we have a specific place and make our decisions on ourselves from there. So they changed kind of in the 70s, in the 80s, they turned the narrative of the time on its head. So that was kind of the idea, and they set certain requirements to that. They said for this to be made possible for Afrikaners to survive as a people, it is important that they group upon one place, be a demographic majority in a certain area, and from there build their own institutions. They predicted things like, you know, the situation with Eskom and so on. So build institutions where we can take care of our poor, of our needy, of our churches, of our schools, and so on. And finally, and this is, I think, the revolutionary part of the Orania idea, is the idea of own labor. And that is to say that Afrikaners can never be free if we are ruled over, but also we cannot be free if we are ruling over other people. And for that, labor is a fundamental issue for Orania. Thus, in Orania, every piece of menial labor, every piece of work, everything that's done in Orania in terms of work is done by Afrikaners themselves. Changing the narrative from a long history to say we have no intention to use people just for their labor. Everything from cleaning gardens, cleaning toilets, building houses, everything needs to be done by us ourselves. That is a reformative practice, I would say. And on that is the three principles of Orania: own land, own institutions, and own labor. That's the idea part. Now, what's the reality? The reality is the Orania area was used to house, as a temporary encampment, to house people building the Orange River scheme's infrastructure, making the Orange River a sustainable river, and from there developing massive agricultural potential here in the Northern Cape. So that was made possible by building two dams, the Van der Kloof Dam and the Gariep Dam, and a large structure of water canals. And the workers lived here. Then the government moved out of here and started demolishing the town. A large chunk of Orania has been bulldozed when they were still busy. They offered the area to the military and to the police. No one was interested, so they started auctioning it off with the hope that a local farmer would buy it. And there, the idea movement, which already existed, as I said, in the 70s and the 80s, they made a bid on the area, and they bought it in 1991. And then the harsh reality started. This dream that we had, we needed to start working in this ghost town, needed to start constructing, to building an economy. The people who moved here were obviously intellectuals, people buying into an idea, buying into a vision, because there was nothing else to come for. There were no economy, there were no opportunities, there were no jobs, there were very little infrastructure. And in that started the building of Orania, the reality, which is now a community that's moving to local self-sufficiency, that is about 50% electrically independent, that is looking after its own water structures, maintaining its own farming areas, maintaining its own schools and tertiary educational facilities, and so on. And in that, the reality grew, growing in population about 10 to 12% every year, and doing some development. So that is the broad picture. The idea started long ago. It was made possible when a plot was available to buy in this area. It was bought, and then families moved here and started the process of developing the previous ghost town.
Interesting. So, you talk about having your own labor, having your own land, and your own institutions. There is a belief, a general belief, I suppose, in South Africa that the reason why why Orania doesn't have workers from elsewhere, and in particular blacks, it is because it is a racist town. Or I don't know if you refer to yourselves as a town or your own country. I'm still coming to that question. But how would you respond to that belief? Because so many people are of that belief, actually, that Orania is racist. We are not wanted there. If we go there, we're going to be shot. So when I first heard about Orania, I remember somebody was telling the story and was saying, if you are seen crossing the road, you are even shot.
That is total nonsense. We have never, in our 35 years of history, we have never ever moved violently or hurt anyone visiting, moving through Orania, or anything else that wasn't to ill intent to us, or that wasn't criminally active in Orania or attacking us or anything like that. I think there's many records that shows the amount of people that we have received in Orania, whether that be traditional communities that come to learn from us, whether that be people that pass through here, whether that be people that come to meet us for political affairs. I think we've had definitely a clean track record in showing that. You know, it's always interesting. Every black journalist that visits Orania tries to claim he's been the first ever and the only one, but a simple search on the internet will prove that, you know, we've had so many visitors from all over the world, but also black South Africans and other people from the rest of Africa that visited us for various reasons, including learning from us, including media, including political officials. So I don't know how to explain the labor issue any better than this. You know, the same people that say this say that, you know, the human dignity that was removed from them in order to be low-class workers and so on is unacceptable. And in Orania, we really have this, we've made this decision, this active decision for a few reasons. Obviously, for the first reason is that we believe labor is a sacrifice to God, and to work yourself is to build something yourself as a responsibility that's bestowed upon us as Christians. Secondly, to say that in Urania, we believe in the fact that in order to make decisions for ourselves here, we must be a demographic majority. And for that reason, it's also important to do your own labor. And thirdly, we exploit no one. No one needs to be in a position where they can say they've only been used to construct our future for us, to build our future for us, but rather we did it ourselves. So, I mean, people can see ill intentions in that. I can honestly, well, it's how do you test someone's heart? We can say what our official policy is and why we do what we do, and how this is a reformative labor revolution that you won't see anywhere else in South Africa. I believe, maybe on an individual level, but definitely not on a communal level. But if people don't want to believe us, I mean, we can't force them to believe us.
And used, I suppose a black person can't come and stay and live in Orania. Would an English person, a white English person, be allowed there?
Orania is, in the first instance, an Afrikaner cultural community. It's a place where we preserve our traditions, our religion, our faith, our language, our ethnic lines, and so on. So many people from over the world has applied to come and live in Orania for various reasons: safety, economic opportunities, the fact that they just like the community, and so on. And although every individual case is handled on its own merit, I can tell you that many white people who do not share Orania's ideals, whether that be English, whether that be from which other country and so on, have not successfully applied for the right to residency in Orania because of the fact that they are not Afrikaners and preserving our Afrikaner cultural values and so on. So it is about culture. So yeah, it's quite clear that many people who are unwilling to learn our language, who doesn't share our culture, doesn't share our history, and so on, were unsuccessful in their endeavors to come and live here. And some of them, you know, were quite angry at us. They had maybe a different expectations from Orania, different beliefs. But Orania is to preserve our Afrikaner Christian cultural heritage. So, and that's really important to us.
Okay. Ek kan praat 'n bietjie. Ek probeer Afrikaans leer. So, would I be allowed to live in Orania if I were to apply and say I am interested in pushing the Orania agenda?
Yeah, so I could answer you with a certain sense of hostility, but I don't see that from you. I don't see it as I see this as a bona fide, legitimate question to understand out of curiosity, and not attacking our community as many media do. But I want to make it very clear that Orania is not an Afrikaans community. It's an Afrikaner community. Afrikaans is a language. Just as learning the Chinese language or the Mandarin would not make me a Chinese person, or learning Japanese won't make me Japanese, or learning English won't make me an American. I can't help but to be an Afrikaner, and I'm proud of it, and I'm thankful for it. And I think the other peoples of the world must be the same. But being an Afrikaner is much more than just language. It is a shared identity. It's shared cultural beliefs, cultural practices, and so on. So I don't, I've not met many non-Afrikaners who were serious about coming here, specifically Black South Africans. They do test our systems every now and again. Those ones who are actually formally interested in doing so, they maybe come for the reason of safety, or they come for the reason of economic opportunity. And explaining the goal of Orania to them in a reasonable and civilized manner, many of these people said, well, we understand, we wish you the best, and it's not a place where we want to live, and we're not going to cause further conversation about this. And then there's been many cases where Orania system was tested by political, ambitious political people, including members of the ANC or the EFF, and we've sent them the application papers when they asked. Why? Because everyone is welcome to apply. Everyone that seriously wants to come and live in Orania is welcome to apply, but there are a right to residency process, and that is decided by a panel of peers. People who live in Orania, who helped build in Orania, has been in Orania many years, who sacrificed for Orania, and they make that decision with one person from the municipality ex officio also represented there. So every case is handled on an individual merit, but I think, to be realistic, Orania is the one place in South Africa that Afrikaners can call our home, our small homeland. It's the one place that we can say, this is our place, and so on. So it is not a question of pushing people out of Orania, being unwelcome, trying to control people's movements or whatnot. It's a very simple issue of having your own place and truly being a place for Afrikaners. So it is possible for you to apply. Afrikaans obviously it's one of the requirements, speaking Afrikaans fluently. However, I think it would be unrealistic to expect of the community to change its soul as an Afrikaner place for the interests of a singular person. Orania is a communal place. And let me add something else which I think is important, and that is to say there's a formal process, a right to residency process in Orania, and that has been tested by the South African Human Rights Commission and found to be a legitimate process. But there's also the community, and the community is also a role player. So one could jump through all the formal hoops of Orania, and it would still leave you with the question, do you really want to live in the Afrikaner place, in the only Afrikaner homeland that there are? Do you really want to contribute to the community, and would the community accept you? I think the community, the communal interest of the people of Orania is also a very important factor.
Interesting. I want to go back to what you said in the beginning. You do everything yourselves, and what actually clicked in my head was the economy of Orania. How does it look like? And do you guys use rands as the rest of us in South Africa?
Yeah. Oh, the economy of Orania is actually a fascinating story. You must remember that Orania was started with virtually no economy. Not only was the Northern Cape's economy in the early 90s not a very big economy, as it have grown now with agriculture and mining, but in the 90s it was smaller than it is now. And specifically, Orania's economy had nothing. There was no running businesses. There was no industries. There was nothing. It was a time where we speak about, bread and water days, because that is what it were. So what did we focus on? And it remained our strategy till today. We focused on infrastructure that will incentivize economic growth. For example, one of the first big projects in Orania was a water pipeline to make it possible to irrigate very dry, arid, Karoo sheep farm style areas, so that we can start planting maize, wheat, pecan nuts, almonds, fruit trees, and so on, because we knew in 10 years and 20 years, those opportunities will be worthwhile. So we spent the money that we had on that infrastructure. And now we are exporting pecan nuts, for example, to China, to the Far East. It is something that took 20 years to get to almost 30 years to get to a position where it's really commercially very viable. But the investments in the early days in infrastructure was very important. Secondly, you referred to our local so-called currency. It is the ora. So why the ora? Well, firstly, we knew that when monetary value leaves a closed community, that community becomes poorer. That's quite obvious. If you can keep it circulating inside that community, the community, grows economically and the people become richer. So that's just a basic economic fact. So the circulation of value internally was important. So the ora helps with that. It circulates value internally in the community. So that was very important. The second thing was a safety concern. No one is going to rob the bank in Orania. No one is going to rob the shops or the supermarkets or the fuel station or the businesses, because you will it won't be very smart to rob a place and then have oras where you cannot use anywhere else, so it's major security help for us in there. There's no sense in robbing a place in Orania. The third thing was also for economic growth, and that was to say the oras that we use as a system, a monetary system, is backed up by rands in a bank account. And those rands stay in that account, and when we print more oras, we put more rands in that account, and that became quite a significant sum of money, and that's in a bank, so it gains interest. So while we are doing business with the ora, the rands are gaining interest, and in the bank, in our own bank, by the way, and that interest we then use to help train entrepreneurs and business owners and so on through the Chamber of Commerce. And the fourth thing is just symbolism. That's also quite important. Back to your original question, yes, you can do business in Orania with rands. We do accept rands, we do accept card payments and so on, but you can also do a business with the ora. And we also digitalized the ora. It's our newest project by the Chamber of Commerce, whose sole mission is to help grow businesses and help grow business opportunities, empower businessmen and women, and so on. So you can also now do business, do transactions with the digitalized version of the ora, which is a very interesting standalone app. It works as a direct transfer, wallet to wallet, something maybe similar to cryptocurrency, but backed by rand, so it's stable. And those are all measures that we use to grow our economy. I always use the example of roads. In Orania, as in many traditional villages, you will find that the good amount of the roads are gravel roads. What's the reason for that? The reason for that is very simple. It costs, we did the calculations, it costs more than 3.5 million rand to tar 1 kilometer of road properly. So if we're going to spend all the money, millions and millions of rands or oras, into tarring roads and paving roads, we lose out an opportunity cost on money and resources that we could allocate to help business development, right? So put down infrastructure. What is the infrastructure of the future? It's internet connections. We've been putting fiber optic internet connections to every new plot that it's been serviced, every new household. We've been servicing more industrial plots where businesses and manufacturing can develop and can thrive. And that is just more important for us than tarring all our roads. So we understand that a road is aesthetically, it's nice if it's nice and tarred and so on. It's not an economic priority, and for that reason, we decided to focus on things that will grow our economy. So there's a few facts on Orania's economy.
So I'm a rural boy, in fact, a farm boy, and our roads are not in very good conditions, especially the rural part. How do you keep your roads in a proper functioning state, especially since you are running businesses? So I'd assume there's some form of trade that takes place between Orania and other regions. You're just making
Yes, absolutely.
So how do you do that? And second question related to that: if the rest of South Africa was to adopt the same model, do you think it would work for the country?
Do I think it will?
Do you think it would work for the country?
Oh, okay. So that's a few questions. I think it's a few good questions. Firstly, how do we do it? Well, we struggled in the beginning because we had very, very little resources when we started. Literally in the early years of Orania, every basic municipal service was delivered with an old, rusted up Hilux bakkie, as you can imagine. So that would be, you know, the removal of trash. It would be, you know, servicing a lot of services in the municipal area and so on. So how do we do it? Well, we had a settlement with the South African government in the year 2000 outside of the High Court, where we settled that Orania can have its own local government status. We built upon that. It was one of the big wins in Orania's history, where we could start collecting. Apologies. Where we could start collecting our own internal levies and municipal taxes. So that helps us a lot in developing infrastructure. So things like roads, it's all funded by us ourselves. Our income tax, our company tax, our VAT still flows to the South African government. So we are paying. We receive no local services back. We receive no state loans. The state normally loans money to municipalities for expansion and so on. So everything is funded ourselves. So we have teams responsible for that, whether that be for roads, for sewage, for electrical, and all those kinds of things. People are responsible, and they have that allocated responsibility, and they have to maintain it. But yet again, it comes down to prioritizing what you want, and for us, economic growth is very, very important. What we've achieved is that about 2 years ago, we opened our own oxidation-based sewage dam that can service up to 10,000 inhabitants. It is a system that we built here that is not dependent on any electricity, or very little, only for pumping the sewage, but the entire system of breaking down the sewage and cleaning the water is a process that works without electricity. So that was a major step for us in terms of service delivery. And then we also expanded through a commercial model our electrical grid. We've been working on it for a few years now, and I can tell you, while South Africa had stage 6 load shedding over the weekend, Orania's power did not go off once. We maintained with a battery the entire community's power demands, making it possible for our economy to continue while the electricity is off. So that is a major step forward. It's also something that we commercially built out and made possible, and we are very thankful for that. It's really a major step forward. It's a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and grace from above that have made that possible. Finally, you asked about the Orania model. Well, I'm a big proponent to say that is one of the only ways forward for South Africa. For too long, people put their trust in politicians that do not have their interests at heart. For too long, people thought that someone is going to come and you know, figure out their problems for them, whether that be economic, service delivery, crime related, or whatever. I think one of the things that the people of Orania said is, well, no one is coming. No one is coming to save us. No one is going to change our situation. We have to do it ourselves. And if we fail, we're going to fail. So we need to succeed. And in that, we build out a lot of mechanisms to maintain law and order, to build out services, to give economic opportunities, and so on. I think for South Africa, if communities can just embrace the mentality that no one is coming, no politician, or very, very few politicians really care about the state of the people in the communities. The people should take charge themselves, look after their own services, look after their own safety, look after their own economic opportunities and prosperity. I think the model could really work for South Africa. That is, you know, that is Orania's message. We even hosted many traditional communities, including the Baralong people close to Bloemfontein, the community of Mnyameni, the Xhosa community in the Eastern Cape, as well as the Amabele people. They all have been here. We've also spoken to some of the Khoi people who are currently residing close to Springbok in the Northern Cape. And we've had conversations about how we have done certain things, including our banking system, including municipal service delivery, and including, very interesting, land ownership. Many of these traditional communities are in a situation where the ANC recognizes their traditional leadership and their traditional families and so on. However, they still revert back to elected South African political leadership in the area, meaning that many of these traditional families and these traditional communities don't really have so much say over themselves. And many times their land is put in a trust, and that trust is maintained by the government, meaning they can't be in any opposition of government policies in their area because their land is firmly held onto by the ANC. So there were even some communities who I won't necessarily name on a public podcast. Obviously, they are in the spotlight for this, but or they could be in the spotlight for this, that asked how can they move their land ownership model away from something that the government own and to something that the traditional community themselves own. And I think we gave a certain degree of advice for them about how we build out our land owning system. So so that's kind of if I say the model in the broader South Africa, I think there are prime examples of how Orania has started to transfer its model to other communities who wants to seize that and use it for themselves.
I'm just thinking about the Zulu Nation as you tell me this, and I wonder if this is the same vision that they had. A few years ago, I remember, I think it was the late King or somebody who is prominent there, said, we actually want to take the Zulu Nation and make it an independent state. And I wonder if if the Zulu Nation or KZN followed a similar model, would get where you guys are. I don't know what your population is for starters, but I know the KZN population is a couple of millions. Do you think if they were to say we are taking our own independence, they would get to where you are? I'm just using them as a typical example.
Yeah. I think it's possible. I think it is possible. That would depend on the will of the people to make it happen, right? So in Orania, we say we create. That's actually a quite interesting story. In the 90s, we were in conversation with then Deputy President Thabo Mbeki. And he said this, that was some of the people of the Volksstaatraad, which at that stage were representing some of the interest of Afrikaners, one looking for a homeland and so on. So those people visited then Deputy President Thabo Mbeki, and they had certain things that they said. Some of them, a bit more, I want to say, aggressive in their pursuit. And Thabo Mbeki told General Constant Viljoen at that stage, who one of the guys representing Afrikaners, he said, you have a lot of plans here, but if I were you, I would do the following. And then he said something that we didn't understand at that stage, but he used the words, show me the animal. And that is a traditional, tribal hunting remark to say if someone wants to join in the feast of eating from the hunt, he must prove that he can, produce an animal to add to the feast. And he said, show me the animal, which means create a reality that no one can deny. You as Afrikaners want certain things, create a reality that no one can deny. And that is also, that led to the declaration in Parliament by Wally Musa saying the pursuit for Afrikaner self-determination is a legitimate pursuit. So that's the message I would give to the other peoples in South Africa, to say, create a reality that no one can deny. Our strategy in Orania was always to create de facto realities and then get de jure recognition for that. So first de facto, first reality, then de jure, the legal recognition for it. And in that way, we've created many things, whether that be the acknowledgement of our local government system, whether that be our bank, which is a prime example of something that we built from the ground up and then got recognition for it when it was already existing. And it went through certain phases from something close to a stokvel to a credit union and now a cooperative bank, which means that everyone involved with the bank, every person with an account at the bank is a shareholder. So those are some of the ways that we created de facto realities, and it got de jure recognition. And that would be my advice to someone like the Zulu people: create realities.
Okay.
I think it's possible. They are a large nation, and they have got a geographical area which they predominantly reside in, making it possible for them to at least have higher levels of independence, maybe have more control towards their own say and so on. And I think it's possible.
And what is the Oranian population?
Orania's population is about 3,000 souls.
3,000 households.
3,000 people.
Oh, okay. Okay. And how many households, if I may ask?
I think it's about 1,000, including, which would include rental space for single people and so on. We are in the process of adding another 500 in the next year or so, because of the high demand for housing, people moving to Orania. House prices are quite high because of that. So we must saturate the market a bit by servicing new plots so that people have access to opportunities. It's very expensive to service plots here because of the environment, very dry, very arid, lots of rocks. But about 500 more should be added to that in about a year or two.
And Joost, if I may ask again, I'm gonna go back to the to where you started when you said you make your own political decisions. How do South Africans, the broader South African political decisions, affect your political landscape? That's all.
It definitely affects us. It's an interesting thing. I think one of the main shifts that happened in the people of Orania's minds is thinking of Orania from the perspective of a nation state, which is a relative new kind of way of thinking, right? The nation state has not been around that long, and the dominance of the nation state's not that old. If you think about South Africa as a country, you think when the British made it one country in the year 1909, 1910, right? It's about 115 years of being one country. You could also imagine South Africa as a region, as part of a bigger continent, and as a collection of peoples. If your attention or your focus, your perspective moves to the latter, that be regional thinking, and thinking in terms of the many peoples of this area, you can't help but to understand that the actions of one group, the actions of one representative, the actions of one area affects its neighbors. Even independent countries like Lesotho and Swaziland, who are landlocked, they are also influenced by South African politics. To an extent, South Africa is influenced by African politics. So the region you are in will always play a role in the things that you can do and can't do, and the decisions that you have to make, and your economic realities and so on. However, Orania has also built up over the past 35 years, the ability to speak for themselves. They also created some economic realities which helps them. And I think a very practical example of infrastructure and economic related realities is load shedding, building out our infrastructure so that we, are load shedding free to a large extent. So that is a political reality that from the region, from the area, from South Africa, that doesn't affect us that bad anymore. However, obviously, if the South African economy tanks, for whichever reason, it will also have an effect on Orania. That's just logical if you think in Orania as in terms of the regional way of understanding the context here. So we don't wish bad fate over our region. We don't want the economy tumbling. We don't want political instability. A stable region is good for Orania as well. And I think in that lies a very important part of understanding South Africa and Orania. Stability is a good thing. And we don't want that to just fall away for no reason. Orania is part of the broader realities of South Africa.
And I would assume so. So I wanna I'm looking at the Oranian model, how you guys are doing things, and I'm thinking there are talks around making Africa one, same as Australia. And I just want to get your thoughts on this a bit. Do you think that Africa would advance if we were one nation and a single continent as we are? If we were to say we are doing exactly what Australia is doing, being a continent and a nation all at once, do you think that would work for us? Can we do the same thing that Orania is doing?
I can't remember who said it. Don't think it was Naledi Panor. I can't remember who said it, but someone said, for the nation to live, the tribe must die. That is not Orania's sentiment. We believe the exact opposite. We believe the tribe must live. You know, diversity is the fact that there are different peoples. They have different beliefs. They have different ways, and it's also over. You know, in the context of Black South Africa, there are different tribes with different beliefs and so on. It's not impossible to re-envision South Africa. Many of the borders are, some of them are quite absurd. And if Africa would want to unify, I would say it should be from the context of kind of maybe something where there's recognition for certain areas. You know, I'm not really all that into, you know, the Pan-Africanist idea. It's not something that you know, I think or debate about a lot. I would think giving the different peoples of Africa the opportunity to make decisions for themselves on a political level is good, and economic trade could be more open. I think that could be one of the models. If you even look at the federal model of the United States, that could be an option. In the end, I think Africa is a unique place, and maybe unique solutions must be researched and developed for Africa. There's also a lot of instability and violence to our north. Is that a good thing if we unify ourselves with that? If we see the growth of extremist religious groups and a lot of violence going with that. So we must think through all these things, and I think that is a debate, very quite long debate for the people of Africa. In Orania's best interest, if I must speak on Orania's behalf, we would like to make decisions for ourselves. We would like to encourage and what's the right English word now, to further freedom for our people, but in keeping good relations both culturally and economically, I think lies the secret. That is the way that you develop the broader region. That is the way that you develop Africa. And yeah, without that, I think it's going to be a bit problematic. Without good relations, it's going to be problematic to sustain development. If there's no trust, if there's no economic incentive to exchange goods and services, I don't think it will be good for Africa or for South Africa.
Seeing that you get impacted by the political decisions that are made by our national government, do you guys have a right to vote during elections?
Yes, we do have a right to vote, but Orania's political system is quite unique. We have decided to not have any political parties in our local political system. We don't really believe in political parties as a sustainable way to solve the problems of Africa and South Africa. So our focus is much rather on individuals that get nominated and seconded and then voted for. So if I'm elected, people can hold me responsible for my actions. I'm not kind of a figurehead in a political party. It can just disappear and get replaced with someone else, and the party still kind of can hold its ideological, you know, plausible deniability. No, you as an individual are held responsible, and if elected in Orania on local government level, you also will not earn any salary. It will be volunteer work for the community. There's a small honorarium, but I don't think that's really relevant. So we can vote. We, as a act of good faith, we do not vote in the neighboring municipalities elections. Why? Because we had the court case in 2000 about Orania's political status, And in that, we stated, okay, we don't want you to make decisions on our behalf. We want to be our own local government, which we then settled for in the end. And then we said, well, then it's also not fair. If you can't make decisions for us, it's not fair for us to go and vote in Thimbilihle municipalities and influence your political situation. So we are not going to vote in Thimbilihle's elections because it's an act of good faith. So we don't vote on a municipal level. We vote local government. We vote in Orania exclusively. But Oranians who choose to participate in the provincial or national elections can do so if they want to. And I think, yeah, Orania is not necessarily the place with the most involvement in terms of political parties and voting and so on. We are much more inclined to focus on local solutions, practical local solutions. So our heads are more in that direction. There are some people who vote. I would not say that they are the majority.
Okay, that's great. That's also another interesting fact. Let me move away from understanding Orania, and I'm shifting because we have about 5 to 7 minutes remaining. I want to know what's your take on what's currently happening in the political landscape. Trump saying Afrikaners must come and be refugees in the States. There's a land expropriation bill. There's just a lot going on. And I see you've been very active in the media of late. What's happening? What are your thoughts around the land expropriation bill and Trump's general?
So, with your first question, I said that we could be busy the entire day, and this is another case like that. And we could speak a long time about this. But in short, in summary, I would say the following. I can't speak on the behalf of all Afrikaners. Obviously, I speak on the behalf of the people of Orania and, you know, people who are personally close to me and so on. When I say we are not European, we can't go so-called back to Germany or to the Netherlands. We don't have passports for those places. My family's been here from 1667. We are people of Africa. We are Afrikaners. We speak Afrikaans. This is where we are at home. We have no intentions of being refugees in another man's land. We are also a proud people. We are not looking for handouts and so on. Obviously, people who want to go, that would be their choice. For me personally, for us, for our family, for most people in Orania, and for many other Afrikaners, I can say that I don't see. I don't think we want to be refugees in another man's land. Second thing I want to say is that I think land expropriation without compensation, married with this new proposed bill that land must be demographically shared, which we can speak the whole day about because the studies are so skewed. So what happened is there's a popular figure going around that 70% of land is owned by 7% of the population, which is white people. That is exclusively referring to farmland, right? So the government itself has got millions and millions of hectares, of which they are the curator, many of which lays barren and undeveloped, and then also which isn't counted in the study is the Ngunyama Trust, the Khoza land, the Transkei, the Ciskei, all these places which is communal. So it's not being counted because it's communal land. Black land ownership in South Africa works a lot different than you know the system, the more free market based European system of private property. There's a very interesting combination of communal and privatized land, which is communal in sense of tribal affiliation, and then private in terms of family affiliation, which is more the system where many Black South Africans reside under. Very interestingly, Orania's system is similar. It is a combination of communal and privatized land, which is quite interesting. That relation. I think land expropriation, based on skewed studies, based primarily to satisfy the ANC voter base, is not only morally wrong; it will also be wreak economic havoc in South Africa. Forcing things like that is not a good thing. I think anything in South Africa must be people driven, not driven from a perspective of just sustaining a voter base. So I think the whole idea of just redividing, doing a racial audit of title deeds in South Africa and then redistributing it to people based on that demographic realities. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it's a good idea to take people's property and without compensation. I think it's not good. It's also, as an Afrikaner, I'm giving the Afrikaner perspective. We feel denied in the terms of the Bella Act, in terms of land expropriation and so on, as if we are being pushed out. We see ourselves as natives of this country, and we have no other place. And this sends a clear message to Afrikaners that where we had two Boer republics, which was the Free State and the Transvaal, we now have no communal land except Orania. So that's another mistake to make. There's individual white people owning land, but there are no place which is the Afrikaners' place. There's a place which is the Zulus, the Xhosa peoples. We have no place which is the Afrikaners' place. We have no home in that to that regard. So firstly, what I wanted to say was about the communal land ownership, the combination with private, and then and the skewed studies on that. And then I wanted to say that land expropriation, I think, will be catastrophic for South Africa. And then the final part is to say, what do we think about, Trump's comments on South Africa? Well, I think we are glad in the urgency to which the Americans reacted to land expropriation. I also believe that a major motivation behind this is American geopolitical interests, whether that be South Africa taking Israel to the ICJ, or what IJC, what the International Court. Yeah. And I think also the South African government's conversations with Iran about uranium is something that doesn't sit right with the Americans. So I think geopolitically, that is the primary concerns for the Americans. And I think that's the reason why they made some of these comments. But obviously, if people are internationally, there's outrage about expropriation without compensation. We appreciate the urgency for that. We even appreciate the hand to say you can be refugees here. We appreciate that Afrikaners have been identified as a specific group of people. In that lies more for us than being refugees. The fact that we are recognized as a people is very important for us. So I think there's many different perspectives on this. We are thankful for being recognized. We're thankful for the urgency. We are against land expropriation, but we also must be careful to not become a playing ball in a larger geopolitical conflict. That won't be good for any South African to be a playing ball in a Cold War style conflict. So I would think the focus, and if we go to the United States, our message will be this of recognize Orania, recognize some of the plight of the Afrikaner people, and look at our solution that we are proposing, that the peoples of South Africa must take responsibilities for their areas. That would be kind of our message to the United States, but we have no intention to be refugees. We will stand on our feet. We are not speaking on behalf of the people of Orania, but we don't want to be beggars in another man's country.
You've spoken about the Bella Act. You touched a bit on land expropriation and Trump's comments. I know that we've run out of time. It's exactly 12 o'clock, and we said we would stop now. It's 12:01 actually. I want us to go back to that. Hopefully, we're going to have time and talk about that in detail. We just wanted to understand the state of Orania and what it is. And I think you've given us a bit of an idea of Orania. And for that, we are grateful. But maybe as a concluding question, I would love to find out from you, how do you envision the future of Orania to be like?
How do we engage?
How do you envision the future of Orania to be like?
Okay. Medium-term future for Orania is to grow in what we call an urban city. Remember the Boer people, the Afrikaner people, we are people of the field, we are farmers. we don't want a grey city center with urban development and a concrete jungle. So we are people of the openness, we are people of agriculture. So we are going to develop a city where a proper economic base can be sustained. And we view that as something that is in line with our rural roots, right? The idea of a rural community with goods and services on city level. Then we are going to build out our educational facilities. We are focusing now on both our schools as well as tertiary training. We've been training. We set up a college where agricultural an agricultural college with civil engineering is one of the new diplomas that one can pursue, as well as masonry, electric, and plumbing. So those are things that we want to expand dramatically in order to educate, in order to empower. I envision a larger sense of diplomacy, whether that be to African counterparts in the rest of Africa, but also specifically to those who are our, act in our interest, whether that be in Europe or the USA, making friends there as well. And I envision, envision greater diplomatic relations from Orania itself. And yeah, so economic growth, I envision educational growth, more people moving here, and then finally larger diplomatic relations. And that is some of the short-term things that we will see in Orania, hopefully, through grace from above.
I know when people listen and watch this conversation, they're going to have a lot of questions around inclusivity. And maybe as we end, I must say this in our second sitting, and this is me inviting you on air. We are going to start by talking about your understanding of inclusivity and just unpacking that, because many people don't see it the way that you see it. And maybe this is an opportune moment for you to try and sort of like change the perspective, because there's no one way of looking at things, and I think you would agree with me there. So maybe as a parting shot, I will say in our next sitting, please just be ready for that inclusivity question, which I think is very much important for everybody that is part of the audience of BTH. But with that said, thank you very much for this wonderful conversation. Truly appreciate your time.
I appreciate the opportunity, and yeah, thank you for that. I think it was a good conversation and a good exchange of ideas.
Thank you, Joost.
Now we're going back to square one, making fire.